Hello, and welcome to Ask an Archaeologist. I'm Paul Duncan McGarrity.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Ask an Archaeologist podcast with me, Paul Duncan McGarrity. And this episode I am talking to Sarah Hayes of the Coffin Works Museum in Birmingham. Really interesting talk, and one that got me thinking a lot about sort of the way smaller museums have an impact on, a lot of the people that I've interviewed. I always try and get round to a point where I ask people how they got into the heritage industry in the first place. And quite a lot of them have responded that it was sort of something they got into when they were kids, and it was from like visits to sites or museums. And yeah, I thought it was a really interesting point that I hadn't really considered is the impact that small, local, kind of like maybe stranger, more niche museums have on people, particularly sort of local ones. That's, you know, the ones that have a tiny budget but speak about the stories of a specific place. One that sticks in my mind is there's a museum in Watford, which is essentially printing works and Watford Football Club, and then a little bit of Rome in it. And it seems quite eclectic when you're in there, but it's some of the big stories that affect the communities directly around it. And, you know, we get into it. It's one of those, they're these institutions that are run on such a mishmash of different ways of being promoted and kept alive by just enthusiasts. So I think it's a really interesting talk. It started me thinking about how to. One of the things that came up was how social media is a big sort of horrible term to use, but game changer for museums that don't have the budget or the impact of some of the bigger ones, like the British Museum, the Natural History Museum. Those guys have sort of an international impact, whereas, as we've seen with things like the Museum of Rural Life, and just one individual using their ability to get into social media and raise the profile is incredible, but it relies in those instances on one individual being, or a small team being quite creative and having to work very, very hard. So I don't know. I mean, this is just, I don't know whether this is pointless thought, but I was wondering if there is something that could be done whereby we once a month, I was actually saying once a week or once a month, there's just a signal boost. Again, another one of those jargony terms, but where some of those bigger museums use their social media and their impact to just collectively pick one smaller museum every month and just for a day tweet about the work that they're doing. Now, I've said this to a few people and they go, no, they won't do it because they'll perceive it as damaging their audience or you know, moving eyes away from their product. And I just think that's a short-sighted way of looking at it. My thoughts are it would help the industry as a whole, because, like I've said in those interviews, the people who go and visit the small museums, it forms habits. People get used to going to see these sort of exhibitions and going to these institutions. And it's the habits that are formed from, you know, always going to see the things that mean something to your local community, to learn something about your specific area, and then that becomes, more people who are aware of the heritage industry and what we do. Potentially more people would want to support it financially through volunteer time, just from going to visit it, or and this is very important for the podcast that I do, it works as an inspiration for people who want to carry on working within the heritage industry. Which I think, obviously I'm biased because the whole podcast is about that, but I think it's an important thing. It's the small, local, niche museums. People might not always know that they exist, particularly the ones that are on very specific subjects and areas of interest. But if you raise the profile of those, it increases the audience that are aware of it, and you might inspire people to find a new love, to discover a thing that they had never previously realised was what makes them excited. And I don't think it would cost much time or money, and I genuinely don't think it would cost people audience. I think it would increase audiences. It would make museums and the like historic institutions feel more like a collective family. I don't know, like it just all working together, all pushing for the same thing. I guess, considering half of it's about competing with each other for grants and so on, there's a competitive element to it, but I think it's something that would benefit the whole industry. Oh, I'm probably waffling, let's be honest. And if I am, I apologise for that. But I just thought it was an interesting interview. It raised a lot of interesting questions, and I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think. If you've got any thoughts on I don't know, the social media aspect of museums or anything really, just drop me a line at Ask an Arc. Please continue to pass this on to other people. I've found some of my favourite podcasts through things that my friends have put me onto, so I think it's genuinely the best way of doing it. Thanks again to everyone who's been in contact. Thank you for the feedback from various things. It's always nice to hear from people. And enjoy this next episode with Sarah Hayes and the Coffin Works. And until next time, I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.
Damn it! I never turn my phone off, Paul. You're lucky.
I like that. Thank you.
I know.
And thank you for having me in such an atmospheric and exciting room.
Oh my gosh, yeah. This is the only place you can get any peace. No, that's...
It's
It's recording. No, it's... I say it's the only place you can get peace. You can hear it upstairs. You can still hear the phone ringing.
Right. So we're down in the stores,
Yep.
basically, for the museum, and it's brilliant. It's like every store that It's just every store what you hope a museum stores look like.
It's the smallest store I've ever been to. So This is
Right.
where the core collection's kept. So anything that's too precious, like we've got one-off items, one-off objects that we can't put on display, we keep in here. But it's actually, because there isn't loads of boxes, we can keep it tidy.
Yeah. Oh,
So
that's what's weird about it. You're right.
It is, isn't it? Apart from a few random bags and a bin that hasn't been emptied, but there's nothing that's there's no food in there. And we haven't got drinks either.
No, we haven't got drinks.
In a bottle.
Yeah, absolutely, in a bottle. So, hello, Sarah.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm really well, thank you, yeah.
Good. Well, thank you very much for agreeing to do the podcast. That's
Thanks
the
for
first thing.
Thanks for asking me.
Secondly, thank you for not telling me you have an identical twin sister who came on a site tour of an archaeological site nearby, and I went, "It's lovely to see you again." And she went into a spiel, which I think the pair of you probably have to give. Yeah.
Do you know, we forget to tell people because to us it's just, it's our life, our lives.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
people say, "You didn't tell me." Well, didn't think
No.
and then he makes it funnier anyway.
Oh, it was... I don't know whether it was a look of this again or a genuine glint in her eye of like, hello.
Oh, she finds it entertaining. So people, if they call me Anne-Marie or Anne-Marie Sarah, people get really embarrassed. I'm like, no, we're not offended.
They're identical twins.
Yeah.
It would be weird.
But then people say, they then take it upon themselves to point out the differences. And at that point I have to say, no, stop. It's getting personal. Mm-hmm. Does not give you license to do that.
Right, that's reasonable.
That's a twin handbook.
Yeah.
Tip for anybody.
So what I found interesting is the reason I was giving her a tour is she worked at...
PMP Consultants, but she's a volunteer here as well.
Yes.
So she works for Quantity Surveyors. She used to work in museums.
She did used to work in museums.
At Think Tank, Birmingham Science Museum.
Yeah.
And she used to manage the front pass team there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's changed careers almost, you think, completely working for Quantity Surveyors, but she's so linked to the heritage world still, because obviously they work on old buildings still.
Yeah. So you just, that's part of the world that you get into.
Yeah, and people forget that she's a volunteer because she's my sister.
Right.
But I get her doing everything. She's a photographer as well.
We should talk about yourself, obviously, and how you got into it. But then we're going to talk a little bit about the museum that we're sat in.
Yeah.
Because, would you want to tell people what museum this is?
Yeah, so I'll spell it because sometimes people think I'm saying coffee, what you drink. So COFFIN, Coffin, it's called the Coffin Works.
Yeah.
And it's based around an old Victorian manufactory called Newman Brothers, a Victorian manufactory, and it's where they used to make coffin fittings.
Yes.
So the handles and the back plates for your coffins.
Yeah.
And cutting a really long story short, Newman Brothers were the Rolls Royce of coffin fittings. They made all the furniture for kings, queens and prime ministers for most of the 20th century. So George V, George VI, Queen Mary, Princess Diana, the Queen Mother.
Yeah.
And then because attitudes to death started to change, particularly after the Second World War, people started to fear death. They weren't really spending as much on their funerals. And then cremation came in. It's nearly the final nail in the coffin, because if you're going to be cremated...
Okay, that's a lovely line.
I've used that quite a few times.
Yeah, you have.
But you probably know this, Paul. If you're going to be cremated, you can't have metal handles on your coffin.
No.
It's got to be plastic.
Yeah.
So a company like this, who specialise in metal handles, it's a kick in the teeth for them. So cutting a very long story short again, by the time we get to 1998, the last owner, Joyce Green, she's quite old at that point, she couldn't sell the company, she had no one to pass it on to. So she shuts the doors, ceases trading and walks out and leaves everything behind.
Yeah.
And the museum has been formed around the contents that were left behind.
And it's quite interesting because she literally just shut the doors and everything is here. You have stock rooms full of items. You've got a shroud room with all of the cloth shrouds in 2 different football team colours.
Yes, and the right team's just been promoted.
We're not going to say which one of that is.
Intelligent listeners, I can figure it out.
The museum is in Birmingham.
It's claret and blue.
Yeah. But not only that, but you've got rooms of the sort of the equipment that was used to produce.
Oh my goodness! Yeah.
The stuff.
I mean, you've hit the nail on the head again there, because this is why the building was saved, because you've not only got the original building in a purpose-built coffin furniture manufactory, you've got all the machines that made the stock.
Yeah.
Then you've got all the stock.
Yeah.
And then you've got a business archive, personal effects like glasses and shoes, and it's like stepping back in time.
It is, but also like I the first time I came here, the thing that struck me was the font and the on the sign that you used, and the design of the sign was very fun and sort of quite modern looking, right? And the whole time I've been looking at this museum, it's quite for what you're talking about, you have quite a fun, interesting and accessible approach to it. Yeah. Some people who are older than me and have forgotten how to have fun would call it funky.
Do you know what? You're very perceptive, and that was done on purpose. So obviously we've got the history and the heritage, but we knew that people might think, coffee museum, it's just for goths, and it's going to be a bit weird. So we tried to make it exactly like you say, a bit fun, a bit different, modern.
Yeah.
So we use the nice teal. We use this gorgeous Futura fonts. And then on social media, when we promote ourselves, it's all about people, smiley faces, because people think, oh, the subject matter's death. And it is. But actually, we talk about the people that have kept this project going, the stories of the workers, the volunteers now, the staff. So we did that purposely because we wanted to control our own image.
Yeah. And
tell people what we were about, rather than people saying, I don't want to go there, it's going to be really depressing.
Yeah, yeah.
So you raise a really good point.
But you're quite a small museum.
Yes.
Yeah. So how long have you been operating for now?
We opened on the 28th of October 2014, so nearly 5 years.
And how long have you been involved in the project?
Since January 2014.
Right.
So I was brought in as the collections and exhibitions manager.
Yeah.
Because what I haven't said is when this place closed in 98, Joyce Green campaigned for it to become a museum. She was successful. And then in 2006-07, all the contents were moved to an off-site storage facility.
Right. Oh, right. So you had to get it all back again.
Yes, exactly. And
what did that entail?
800 boxes. It was a volunteer job in terms of dismantling everything. So bless them, the original volunteers did their best. But you imagine trying to piece back together 12 sewing machines and...
So they'd been, dismantled and taken off.
Oh my goodness, yes.
What was the prompting of that? Why did that happen?
The building started to fail. The roof started to fail and water was coming in. The pigeons got in. It was, the stories of Joyce Green and staff coming back to empty the buckets of water. The idea would have been to conserve everything in situ.
Yeah. That's
what Museum of the Joy Quarter did, what Evans down the road did as well. But it was just... the collection was suffering. So the trustees of Birmingham Conservation Trust took it upon themselves to say, look, we need to preserve the collection and get it off-site. Yeah. But it sat in storage from 2006 up until I joined in 2014. Yeah. So in that time as well, a few things unfortunately went missing.
What kind of stuff is, what are you still looking for?
Well, the gorgeous Singer sewing machine chairs, most of them went missing. One was left. And it was broken, but we managed to repair it.
Oh, that's nice.
But we did a fundraising campaign a few years ago and managed to buy some replicas.
Yeah. Oh, so that's what's in now. I see. Do you make any reference to them being replicas in the museum?
We do. And because we actually said, look, guys, we used to have 12 gorgeous chairs and they all went missing. We know we're not going to get the original ones back. Can you help us? And people donated about £4,000 towards that because they're worth quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
If anybody sees a Singer sewing machine chair, just let us know.
Do let us know. Yeah. We'd love to have one, please.
We would. And if you find an original one with some Newman Brothers graffiti, even better. Even better.
And if you know who's took it... Because
you won't get into trouble, honestly. Yeah. Just tell us the truth.
If you have a nan in the Birmingham area who's sitting comfortably.
That's the thing, though. They were so uncomfortable, these chairs. But because you got all these funky pubs and bars opening,
right? You
know what it's like.
So we need to look at coffee shops where bearded men hang out.
Yes, very true.
I've seen a few of those around here. So it's you obviously you've had to piece it all together, and then so that's when you originally come on. Yeah. What's your role now in this?
So I changed from collections and exhibitions manager to museum manager in 2016.
Yeah.
So I still care for the collection. But I say unfortunately because of risk assessments and everything, I now have responsibility for the overall building, you know, and people in it. So visitors, volunteers. But I couldn't do this job without two wonderful volunteer and operations assistants, Kate and Josie, because they manage the day-to-day running of the museum. They recruit the volunteers. It's a real team effort, actually, Paul. And we've got...
Is it 3 permanent staff that you have?
Yes, and I'm the only full-time member.
Right.
But I say that, although Kate and Josie and me both, we give more hours anyway because we love the project. This is the problem when you work in heritage.
Yeah.
It becomes, people say, it's a hobby, isn't it?
Those people find themselves in a coffin, right?
I know. There's one person that always says, I'd love to be able to afford what you do. It's like,
ooh,
okay.
All right, Mum.
Yeah, I know. But you know what? I always say to the team, we're basically running a business here.
Yeah.
With the volunteers who come and work for nothing. Obviously, it's a two-way street. They get something out of it. We are running a small business.
What do the volunteers get out of it?
So... basically, a lot of them say, and there's 3 types of volunteers, there's probably more actually, but you've got the people that have just retired.
Right.
And they're looking to fill their time.
Yeah.
And they can share their skills. And it's an ego boost sometimes, or it's just that. So it is sometimes, if you're a tour guide.
We got a tour guide who was a retired funeral director.
Yes.
And his amount of knowledge that he had was fantastic,
And and when you say, what a great tour, they feel so proud, and they'll look on TripAdvisor, and they'll just it just gives them a boost.
Yeah.
Some people, I think, you've got obviously volunteers who come from universities. They need to do a placement, so they sign up because they've got to give 100 hours. Right. But then they end up staying because we've got this incredible retention. Here, people just don't leave. It sounds a bit ominous, doesn't it?
Again, it's very... considering it's coffining, that is like...
It's a little bit, I know, but I think people just... It feels like a family, It sounds like a real cliche, but I've just done a video for Volunteer Week, and so many people say... It's just the friends you make here. People come for company as well. Okay. We have a lot of people that maybe are looking for work, and they've lost confidence, and they don't know how to get back into it. And this is a route in, and we're not scary.
No, you're definitely not. So that's nice. Well, so we'll get back into this in a little bit, because I have quite a lot of questions, mostly about how you keep a place like this going. Ooh. Yes, exactly. But I want to know a little bit more about your background. Obviously, you've got into the running of this museum. Is that something that you wanted to do, or is that something you always wanted to do?
I've always loved history, so I did an English and history degree.
Whereabouts were you?
At University of Birmingham.
Okay.
But if I said, did I want to do this or no, I wanted to do it when I was a child, I think I'd be lying. I love museums, but I didn't know it was an option. Okay. And as part of my degree course, I did medieval English and history, and I had to do an 18-hour placement.
Right. So
I chose to do it at Blakesley Hall Museum. And I met this wonderful mentor, Jane McArdle.
What's Blakesley Hall Museum?
Oh, sorry. Yes, that's what I do.
That's all right.
Reference.
I am the audience's proxy.
Thank you. It's a timber-framed building. It's Tudor building in Birmingham, in Yardley. And it's a historic house, essentially. Okay. And I volunteered there for a bit, and then met this wonderful mentor, Jane, who said, okay, your placement's over, but there's a job going, a Saturday job at Museum of the Jewellery Quarter. It was all part of the same service.
Right.
So I started there. It was like a Saturday going on the tour or whatever. And then I became a tour guide.
All right.
And then just sort of built my experience up from there. Yeah. Loved it. Finished my degree and thought, is this what I want to do? And if I do want to do it, I've got to do a Master's in Museum Studies.
Right.
So it took a year to think about that.
What did you do in that year?
I carried on getting paid to be a tour guide.
All right, okay.
So we don't pay them here. I always say that. So I expect people to do what I did for free.
Yeah.
Just the nature of where the industry's going, unfortunately. But anyway, so decided I wanted to specialise in museums. Had the goal at that point of becoming a curator, but knew I had to get more experience. And did my Master's in Museum Studies at the University of Leicester.
Okay.
And that was 2008.
Right.
Yeah, and then from there, I took a career development loan, and I had 3 months to pay it back. You think, oh, am I going to get a job? But I got this brilliant research assistant job at the Black Country Living Museum.
Okay.
And got to work on their 1930s high street. It wasn't brilliantly paid, but what an amazing project.
Yeah. So, and what were you doing when you were working there?
So researching.
Sorry. Apologies.
It's okay. Predy's tobacconist shop. Yeah, so it was the Birmingham Road. I've forgotten it all now, but there were original buildings taken from, I think it was the Birmingham Road, and then they were reconstructed at the Black Country Living Museum.
All right.
So I think it was something like £16,500 a year.
But
that way, just to do
straight out of university,
it was
into
a
heritage job. Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's okay. Yeah. And then I managed to just get a series of temporary contracts working on amazing projects like the history galleries at Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery as a freelance curator. I did quite a few projects in between then. And then this is my first permanent job in a museum.
This is your first permanent job?
After, what is it now, 11 years?
Yeah.
It makes the point, doesn't it?
Yeah, you had quite a lot of build-up experience and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think... What were the advantages and disadvantages of having a background of all of those temporary jobs in museums?
I always remember my friend who used to be a line manager saying to me, "Oh no, Sarah, you're a go-getter. You've always got these jobs. It makes you look like you're driven." And I am, but I'm probably not as driven as people probably thought I was. I just had to find a new job every, a year or 2 years. So the advantage of that is that you build your experience up really quickly. So I started tour guiding when I was 19 and I was ahead of the game. So by the time I was, 25, 26, I was a freelance curator.
Yeah.
So I think by doing all these temporary contracts, I got a head start. Right. So that is a positive I would say to people. And also, you end up, I will say that I was after, what job was it? At Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery. I didn't have a job for about 3 months after I finished my contract. So I started blogging and writing blogs about medieval Birmingham, etc. And it's not who you are, it's who people think you are. So keep yourself busy.
Yeah.
I got involved in history committee at the university. So you just fill your time, and it makes you hungry for opportunities as well.
Does the way that the industry is set up, does that benefit people of a certain background?
In terms of, I suppose if you've got a degree, for instance, if you can afford to do a degree.
Yeah.
I would say perhaps, although as an employer now, I always say to people coming, I don't care if you've got a Master's in Museum Studies or not. If you've got experience and most importantly, you've got the right attitude, I'll take a bet on you. I honestly do believe that.
Yeah.
Because I did my Master's with people who had never worked in a museum before, but took it upon themselves to specialise in a topic, an area, which I thought was crazy. So I'd rather take someone who didn't have a degree, but had got 10 years experience.
Yeah.
So I think it's a shame for the industry that we do see it as a hobby. That's why we can justify some lower wages.
Yeah. Where does that come from, do you think, this idea of it being a hobby?
Dare I say it comes from almost government level as well. That I can't remember what it's called, but in France, the cultural industry, it's got its own minister or equivalent of it. Yeah. Whereas we're just bunged in with sport. You're never going to compete with sports. You're just not, are you? And also it's seen as a luxury. Sport generates a lot of money, but heritage, I don't think people realise the benefits of what it can do for mental health. I really don't. We have a lot of volunteers come to us, perhaps who maybe, not a lot, sorry, but in the past we've had people come and say that they suffer from depression, they want an opportunity. And places like this, I think, really do give people opportunities. But I do think it's because it is seen as more of a hobby and a luxury rather than something that has really obvious health benefits. In a recession, they always say people go to museums, don't they? Because it's like an affordable luxury. Maybe it's cheap to get in or it's free.
Yeah.
So I honestly do think that it has to come from government level. That's the only way we're going to change the perception. But also, people love history. They love watching documentaries.
Yeah.
And it is hot. Reading a book, on the weekend, it doesn't feel arduous, does it? It feels like you're just doing it to relax.
Yeah.
So that's probably why. And make no mistake, I do think I'm lucky to be doing something I love as well. I mean, you must be an archaeologist, I say, until it rains. But you're community engagement, aren't you?
I'm indoors now. I'm a house cat. I put my knees and back out years ago.
Wow, Josie tells me about this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see it there. You see it in someone's eyes the day that they no longer want to work outside in archaeology. It'll be one really wet day and they'll come in and you'll go, oh, you're going to become a specialist, aren't you? It's like, yeah.
One of our trustees, Jack, was saying just that when he went on your tour, you've got a big tent, obviously for reasons you've explained, but you're indoors essentially. So it's a bit of a luxury.
It's a huge luxury. It's a very impressive site. Running a place like this, right? You've got trustees and things like that. What does it take to keep this museum afloat?
So, a lot of volunteer effort, because without them, we couldn't open the doors with the existing business model we've got. So we're open 5 days a week. Wednesday to Sunday, we need 4 volunteers a day.
Yeah.
If we don't get volunteers, we don't open. Josie, Kate and I would have to go and do the front of house, etc. So we wouldn't be able to run the business, the strategic stuff in the background. So that's what it takes, first of all, a lot of volunteer effort. And since 2014, they've contributed over £400,000 worth of in-kind support, which really does put things into perspective.
Yeah. And if you don't mind me saying, what kind of budget does the museum run on?
Oh, gosh, our turnover, it's like, what is it, £100,000 a year?
So it's significant...
we make no... we don't lie about this or whatever, that we're a charity, so we only can make a small surplus, but we just about sort of break even, really. So to answer your question, we need visitors as well.
Yeah.
And we need to grow visitors. That's always part of the business plan. Although we haven't got a great budget for marketing. So we rely on social media to get the message out. However, that's not a strict form of marketing. So our volunteers and the staff are also our advocates.
Right.
Doing stuff like this gets the word out as well, because we hear that you've got loads of listeners. Yeah.
Oh, I've laughed too hard there. I was giving the game away.
Oh, dear. But also, our trustees are specialists in their areas as well. So we've got a great accountant who helps us balance the books and helps us every month. We don't get into mess.
Yeah.
Someone's coming through. They're going to knock on the door. But then it takes a lot of goodwill as well.
Yeah.
I was just saying that nobody works 9 to 5 here at all, and if they did, it wouldn't work.
No.
But we've learned a lot. When I took over in 2016, it was sink or swim at that point. And I always, like I say to the team, we are running a business now, and you do get some things wrong.
Why was 2016 that kind of turning point? We had
a restructure, which was always on the cards. But if you can imagine that the team had been reduced from, 6 people to 3. So it was a bit like, we've got to do what we're doing, everything we've done before, but with fewer people.
Right.
Yeah. But then, credit to trustees, they stepped up. The volunteers stepped up.
Yeah.
And they always said, and there's a few people that say, Sarah, you do realise that if you need help, all you've got to do is ask.
Yeah. You said earlier, just in passing, you said that's the way the industry is going, unfortunately. By that, do you mean like that kind of reduction in resources?
And funding.
Right.
A lot of, I know museums, I won't mention any, but used to get a lot of Arts Council funding, and now they don't. So they've got to try and generate their income in other ways. But when I first started in museums, they didn't really think, and it was only 2005, museums weren't really thought of as businesses, especially if they were local authority. You're almost allowed to lose money because you're a public benefit. But all of a sudden, with, the council not doing as well as it was, you've got to start selling and you've got to start making money. Right. And retail's a big thing now. Yeah. Which is why we've this will help as well, generate income for us, just published our guidebook. So it's $9.99. just email us if you want. Yeah. But yeah, so there's a real push for museums to, it's they've got to earn money, and it comes down to the bottom line now. And if you don't balance the books, you close. Yeah. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. And so that was 2016 and 2019, and you're doing all right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. We are. And again, I keep saying it, it's been a collective effort. We've got a long way to go still. Yeah. We've still got to get, more meeting room bookings, more visitors on guided tours. We're doing Prosecco evenings,
You're having to diversify and find other reasons to be doing things.
Yeah. And we want to try so much. But it's really hard to do it with just 3 members of staff who they are duty managers. We are duty managers, so we have to be here for every single event. And like I say, I'm full time, but Josie and Kate aren't. So the volunteers would offer to do it, but there has to be a member of staff available. So that can be hard.
Yeah. It limits what you can do in the Excel. Is there any other? So you've got volunteers putting in incredible efforts. You've got charity fundraising stuff.
Well, do you know what? We need to do more fundraising. The last big fundraiser we did was Lucy Worsley. She's best mates with a former trustee. And
Brilliant.
she did a talk for us and raised £5,000. But fundraising is something we need to do more of. So we are looking for fundraising trustees as well.
No one has ever crammed this many adverts into one.
Desperate.
It does not come across as desperate. It comes across as so savvy.
I've pointed it out now, though.
Don't worry. I've also pointed,
Thanks.
I'll put it in the description if you want.
Brilliant, yeah. But we've got a donations box. We claim gift aid. Gift aid is a lifeline for us, actually. So we do get money from HMRC every single year, but we need to do a push on a campaign. The next campaign we're thinking of is to get one of our barrels motorised downstairs in a barrelling shop.
All right.
So where they used to polish some of the brass handles.
Yeah.
They haven't been working since the 70s.
Right.
We've had them conserved and cleaned, but we just have to raise money now for a motor. So that will be the next big push that we're going to do.
How much do you need for the motor?
We need, for the motor, it's about £1,300, which is achievable. And then the labour costs more than the actual parts these days. So it could be, you might be looking at another 1,500, 2,000.
Okay.
So that, to me though, it is achievable.
That's an achievable goal.
Isn't it?
And is it setting those goals as part of it?
Yeah,
Right.
It is. So, we just did it with I didn't mention the guide, but we had to raise money for that. We got a sponsorship. Most of the money came from volunteers, actually. We said, guys, we need £5,000. And everyone got behind us.
Is there anything that you've wanted to do that you haven't been able to get the funding for? In the motor aside, because obviously that's a future plan, but is there something like, what do we want to do?
Do you know what we really want to do? And we haven't tried yet, but we've got this beautiful courtyard. You've seen it.
Yeah.
And we host loads of events, corporate hire, etc. But it hasn't got a roof. Not that we want a roof, but we want an awning or some sort of cover.
Yeah.
So that will be something that, oh my goodness, we'd love to do, because that means we can have events throughout the year in the colder months.
Yeah.
Because when the project when it was funded, this project before the recession, HLF had promised, now the National Heritage Lottery Fund had promised, I think it was £2 million, I totally forget now, but they had to withdraw the funding. And in the first phase, there was going to be another story on this side of the building.
Right.
And a glass roof.
Which would have enclosed it all. Right. Yeah. I see.
Yeah, but that didn't happen. And that's okay, things change.
Yeah.
Don't they? So.
Yeah. How often did they change, though?
Wow. How often do they change? I mean, do you know what? The original business plan wasn't far wrong in many ways. I say it was, in terms of the visitors, which I won't say too much about, I think they estimate we get far more than we actually do.
Right.
And I don't know. We've got more volunteers than we ever thought we'd have. Mm-hmm. So that's a bonus.
Yeah.
And we're still here 5 years later. So,
which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. How much do you do on the social media side of things? And what kind of advantages does that give to a small, and I'm going to say, bizarre museum?
Oh, could definitely call it bizarre. So social media is a passion of mine. My sister loves it as well. And I think as a museum, we're known for it. So we end up doing talks. And we always say we're not experts, but we're passionate about sharing content.
Right.
So with Anne-Marie, who is a great photographer, and I like doing videos, but I'm nowhere near as good as she is a photographer.
That's your sister.
Yeah, Anne-Marie. Right, yeah. So because we love sharing content, and we said, look, we can't be the biggest, and we might not be the best, but we could put out really good content, and that will make people want to follow us. Mm-hmm. So that was always our rationale with social media. And the staff have got behind it, and the volunteers have got behind it as well. So that is, hands down, I've mentioned TripAdvisor, how it's important to us. Social media is so important for getting our message out. Yeah. So Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. I think we would struggle, honestly, without that. More with managing perceptions. Right. It's like you made that point. Yeah. That you were fun. I think you said funky.
I did. I'm still horrified at myself.
Yeah. Wow, I got what you meant.
Yeah, but still, come on. Right?
I
wasn't even channeling my dad at that point. That's a granddad that I'm channeling. It's like, you funky children.
It's what an older person would say, isn't
exactly.
it?
I do like, that's a TripAdvisor you've definitely had. I did like your museum, it came across as very funky.
Yeah, we'd all laugh if we read that. Yeah, but it all honestly came, Paul, from just wanting to stand out, and we said, do you know what, as well, we haven't got any red tape here. So within reason, we can do what we want to do. So if we want to share content, we can do it. Yeah. We don't have to go through a marketing team.
Does it make you... do people get into a dialogue with you?
Yes. And I will say in the beginning, we perhaps didn't engage with people as much as we could have. It was very much us putting a message out there and a photo or a video. But now we try to keep those conversations going. So visitors will share images afterwards. They'll say, what a fantastic tour. And then we'll say, fantastic, do you want to go on our newsletter? Yeah. And that's the way you keep it going.
Yeah, you keep those kind of...
You do. And like I say, we're not saying we're the best at all when it comes to this. We've just got a passion for it. And people, I always say in the talks that I do on it, it's not rocket science, social media. But the reason so many people, I think, are doing it badly or just can't be bothered is because it does take effort.
Yeah.
To do it well.
Just an extra part of your already full-time job.
Yeah, I've made it though. Yeah, I don't think it was when I first started. So right. It's the legacy. But like I say, it's all a team.
Whoever takes over for you is going to be like, look at that job description. It's an absolute Frankenstein.
Well, you need to make sure that, so never take a blurry photo.
Never.
That's what, say. Ever. I've been known to delete photos occasionally if they're blurry.
What, from the account you're like, look, it pops up and you're like, nope.
Yeah, because it just sends the wrong message.
Yeah.
But the content's brilliant. I'll save that and go, let's get a better photo. It doesn't happen anymore.
No. You've got better.
And everyone here is passionate about it. So Josie's got his brilliant talk coming up very soon on James Watt. So we then sort of push the talks.
Yeah. I was going to ask just about with your sister as well, having got a background in museums as well. What was that like when you were both working? Were you both working in museums on short contracts at the same time, or? Yeah,
so it was because of that placement I had to do. And I ended up working at Museum of the Joy Quarter, and they were looking for tour guides. And I said, Anne-Marie, you should do this.
Yeah.
So she said, okay. And then... yeah, they hired her as well.
Right.
And we always said what we should have done. It's like played tricks on tours, like one at the top of the stairs, one at the bottom. But we never did it.
Oh my goodness.
We didn't abuse it. So, Anne-Marie went down a slightly different route within Heritage because where did she go? She worked at Blakesley Hall and supervising the seasonal staff.
Yeah.
And then went to Think Tank. And that was a big eye-opener.
Sciencey museum.
Yeah.
Because that's a much bigger museum. Gosh, yeah.
So if I have any questions, I ask her, the amount of... I mean, she loved her job there, but that made her tough because you can imagine, we have nice visitors here. I'm not saying, by the way, anybody that thinks something that you don't, but occasionally people shout at you.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of people are we talking about here?
People that all just say, well, I'm not happy with this because that's broken or that isn't. And I sometimes think, Paul, that I know people pay a lot of money to get in. I get that. And Anne-Marie always said it's fair enough, but there's a way to complain. Be nice, be friendly, and you'll probably get what you want. Don't shout at people.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think there's an expectation difference between the two museums?
Yeah, because they use the term as well, interactive. And as soon as you say that, push buttons, noises, sounds, it's sensory. Whereas here, we try to manage expectations. I said that in a way.
I would even argue, though, that this is a fairly interactive museum.
So, again, a really good point. We do use the word here, but I think when I first started, interactive to me...
yeah.
Because I used to work at Think Tank as well as I project managed the We Made It exhibition. And that was interactive in the sense of moving things, pushing. But here it's more engaging with the team, talking. It's a tour.
Yeah.
You get to handle objects.
Yeah.
It's just a different way.
Yeah, but it has still got that nice immediacy of the things. Watching someone run one of the drop...
the drop stamps.
Drop stamps.
Yes.
And stuff like that.
Well, that's actually a really good point because we get to stamp out a rest in peace ornament. But then you could just get one in the shop as a souvenir. I needed to buy them, but I thought that was another plug.
I'm not holding it against you. I think it's fantastic.
Oh, thank you. And, I always say in theory, if there was a market for metal coffin furniture, we could go back into business tomorrow.
I couldn't. No, no, because there's new health and safety laws. It's like considering one of the things is that you have what was it? A furnace that would have melted lead next to where people were working. You couldn't start tomorrow.
Well, no, you just spoiled the fun now.
Yeah. I mean, unless there's like a clause for no, we're a heritage industry. We're allowed to kill people with lead.
That's it. People have shorter life expectancies. It's fine. As long as you sign on the dotted line.
That's fine. But have you enjoyed your time working in the museum?
Oh, I've loved it. This was a dream job for me. I used to work, I've said this twice now, Museum of the Jewellery Quarter. And I remember when this project, the Coffin Works, got its money the first time around, about 2005-06, and I knew about it. And then I learned that it lost its funding. And I thought, I was sort of secretly happy, because I thought, one day, that'll give me time to actually get my experience and maybe come back as a curator.
Yeah.
And then to dream that I was essentially the first curator, oh my goodness, it was... So they say be careful what you wish for, but I always wanted this project, and I feel lucky to have got it.
What's something that you, as the first curator, what is it that you would like to have left behind for the person who takes over in 30, 40 years?
Oh my goodness, so something it's quite boring to say this, but I'd like to have catalogued everything so people can find objects and information, because at the moment... volunteers and staff are still asking questions. So I know it's all here, or you can look around, the ledgers are there, but it's not quite accessible yet. So if I can say, even if I don't finish it whenever I leave, if I leave it in a healthy state and someone can pick it up, that would be the best legacy, because this collection does fill a gap in material culture. There's nothing like it in the world, because Birmingham was the home of coffin furniture. So to have a purpose-built coffin furniture manufactory in the city, where it's home to, with all the contents, the business archive, I can't stress how special that is.
Have you had any academic interest in it?
Actually, quite a bit, and I say quite a bit, relatively speaking. Someone in Canada, this fantastic, she is a researcher in Melbourne, Australia, Hilda McLean, and she is so knowledgeable. Yeah. She visited recently. She's been here 3 times. And if I ever have an inquiry that I can't answer, and there are quite a few, I say, Hilda, can you help?
Yeah.
Dr. Julian Litton, who is the foremost expert on the English way of death, he did a series of short films for us. That has now enabled us to get those online, and people they don't almost have to come to us anymore. They still do, but we've got this great collections archive that people can go to. Yeah. And they can research themselves.
Considering you have quite a diverse background in museums, you've worked in a lot of different kinds of them. But now, would you say you're in here for a good long while?
Do you know, it's a good question, because it's my first permanent museum job. So I don't want to go anywhere just yet. And I still feel like there's unfinished business. Yeah. I feel like, forget the collection side for a moment, because that's always going to be unfinished to a degree. Let's get the business side sorted, so that whoever does come in will know it's healthy. Yeah. And it can stand on its own 2 feet, and it can... Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So I don't want to leave just yet, but... Going back to the other point, I always had temporary contracts, so I had to leave. But I think, everyone looks for that next goal, don't they? Yeah. And honestly, I don't know what I want to do next, because I don't want to move away necessarily from the collection side of things, from the people side, because I always want to bring people and collections together. I love social media. But the problem is, if you go too much higher, you move further away from what you love. Yeah. And I think people should be rewarded sometimes more for saying, do you know what? I don't want to just progress for the sake of it. But it never happens, does it?
There's a certain, I'd say there's a certain expectation that you will always, you'll move to management one day, won't you?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, of course. And then I've got quite a few friends that they definitely haven't fallen out of love with museums, but you could say, do you know that you work in a museum in particular? Because it's got to that point where it's more sort of paper pushing, you know. And...
event management and admin.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I've got a bit of that here. and it's a welcome break from.
Well, yeah, but then when you were doing that, I'm sure the museum stuff becomes a welcome break.
Yes.
If you've got that balance between the two,
yeah,
then if you always have something else that you could turn your hand to.
That's it.
Yeah.
That is it. And I'm really happy here. I love the job. I love the people. We've got tenants over there as well.
So yeah, you've got rent. Some of the building is rented by other organisations. That pays some of the way.
It does. It pays. What does it generate? About £45,000 a year, something like that.
Right.
Maybe 47. So that was always the plan.
Yeah.
The museum will not sustain the operation just by itself. We need the tenants.
You're too niche.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Which is why we do things like, we've tried Folk Fest, we've got a silent film night coming up.
Right.
We've got a fantastic courtyard that you can hire and hold. We had a blooming wedding reception here.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago.
Goths gotta marry.
They weren't even goths.
What?
I know. No, we might be doing steampunk weddings at some point, but they were heritage people.
Yeah.
We've got a, well, I won't mention his name actually, quite a big social media person in museums who might be having his wedding reception here later in the year. So yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
It is, isn't it? But we've
I'm going to guess it's the guy from the Museum of the Rural, whatever it is.
Oh, well, do you know what? You said it.
Yeah. Because do you know what I was thinking? Who's big in museums? Oh, there's only one of them.
That's true, isn't it? He's done so well. He's so down to earth.
Good. Lovely
fiancé as well.
Yeah. That sounds lovely. I wanted to ask you something else, though. Because you've got this background in a diverse series of museums. This is a very specific topic.
Yes.
Is there something that you now know about that you did not think you would have to learn about from your beginning of your career?
Yeah. I mean, there are questions that I ask now, and the public asked. So, and I've forgotten the answer to this one, but the public was saying, "How hot does a cremator get? How long does it take for a body to decay? So things like that." Because I joined for the industrial social history.
Yes.
But our visitors started to ask us questions on tours, and we then thought, do you know what, we're going to have to work with funeral directors.
Yeah. And
so what we do now, we go around the crematorium and go on tours there and get to ask them questions about embalming. And I know it's... I used to be a bit superstitious, and I still am to a degree, but we do this Dispelling the Myths evening where one of the things the person who leads it says is, talking about it won't make it happen.
Yeah.
So I think people always go, I can't talk about death because,
Yeah.
So I think I've just embraced talking about death a lot more.
Right.
Because people ask you the question. Like, so what do you want for your funeral? And you're going to be cremated or buried and things like that.
That's fascinating.
Isn't it?
You must have one of the healthy approaches to death that you'll ever see.
Maybe, but I know it's a big government initiative, isn't it? To get people talking about planning for the future.
Well, that was something something that's happened here was the what's it called? Death Matters. Dying Matters.
Oh, Dying Matters, because what's your colleague called? I've forgotten his name. Who came and spoke. Yeah. And I think the problem is it's really, the percentage is something like only 3% of people, I probably got this wrong, so forgive me if I have, know what song their loved one once played at their funeral. Yeah. So it's this massive thing that they've got to do at the most traumatic time. Yeah. And the government are saying, and not just government, Dying Matters, talk about it now and it'll be easier in the future. Yeah. And I think, going from the Victorians who embraced it at the point when Newman Brothers set up shop, they embraced it. It was all about social etiquette and having a good death, a good funeral, planning. Whereas, the Second World War, the First World War, because of the trauma of how people were dying, it just scarred people to the point where they stopped talking about it because it was easier not to. Yeah. And I think all of this played a part in our attitude to death today, that we just say, let's not talk about it because we don't do that anymore. So we should be more Victorian.
We should be more Victorian.
Just not spend as much as they did.
That's fantastic. Okay, I've got a couple of last questions for you. First of all, would you have a museum cat or a museum dog?
Oh, right. I'd have a dog.
Yeah.
It's more practical to have a cat.
Right.
I get that because cats can look after themselves better.
Yeah.
I do like cats, but I love dogs.
Okay.
I'm a dog person.
Very political answer.
Because I love all
Have you got a booking of like the Cats and Dogs Appreciation Society?
Because we discuss this so much in the office. But we, I get that. We don't have rodents, by the way.
Oh,
But
good.
but cats would be better.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, look after the archive.
But I've got a whippet, you see. So I like
yeah.
I like greyhounds as well. I used to have greyhounds. So.
Cracking.
Yeah. You're from up north though, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
You
We're giving them a birth. It's sort of like court mandated. You'll look after that whippet boy. Last question.
Yeah.
You work in the heritage industry.
Yeah.
But how would you like to be remembered?
Oh, gosh, what a tough question. Do you ask everybody this question?
The last two are for everyone.
Why didn't I listen to all of your episodes before the end? How would I like to be remembered? Oh, I'm so boring when it comes to this type of thing. I think... God, Paul, I'm struggling. I was going to say something boring like somebody who was lovely and passionate and never shouted at anyone, but that wouldn't be true. Oh, dear. Do you know what I'll say? Just as the first curator of a coffin furniture museum, and probably the only one. Well, no, because I'm hoping it'll stay open and then someone will take over. I hope it doesn't close down. And then I'll be the only one.
I think that's a pretty noble aim, to be the first.
The first.
Of many.
Yes.
Exactly.
I hope so.
Is there anything that you'd like to plug at the end?
Oh, do you know what? I think I've plugged a lot already, but just that. We're open all year round.
Mm-hmm.
5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy. You can book online now via our website. Just come and visit us for a guided tour. If you don't fancy that, we have fantastic events going on throughout the year, plays, performances, and also look on the collections archive. So archive.coffinworks.org. There's some fantastic films on there as well.
Okay.
Thank
you.
The
social media handles?
Oh, yes. So Twitter @CoffinWorks, Instagram @Coffin_works, and Facebook, just search for Coffinworks. We're the only one. So.
Cornered that market.
Oh, thanks to you.
Sarah, thank you so very much for talking to me.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it.
Cool.
Super.
You've been listening to the Ask an Archaeologist podcast with me, Paul Duncan McGarity. The music you were listening to was by From the Ashes. Check them out on Bandcamp. It was produced by me, Paul Duncan McGarity. You can follow me on Twitter @AskAnArch, or you can send an email at askanarch@gmail.com. But most importantly, if you've enjoyed yourself and you think you have a friend who might be interested in the podcast, please tell them about it. Write a review, put up a star rating, let people know that we're here. It's incredibly helpful and much appreciated. Once again, thank you to everyone who has asked an arc. Bye-bye.